I used to believe birthdays were supposed to be gentle landmarks. Moments where life pauses, looks you in the eye, and says, you made it this far and that means something. Growing up, mine were never like that. They were quiet, efficient, almost transactional. A dinner we rushed through. A cake picked up on the way home. A quick photo for appearances. Love in my family was something rationed, not freely given. But even with all that, nothing prepared me for the night my 30th birthday became a public execution disguised as a celebration. And the question that has followed me ever since is this: how long can you survive trying to earn love from people who decided you were disposable before you could even speak? 2 weeks ago, I sat at the center of a private dining room in a high-end restaurant overlooking the city skyline. Everything about the space was designed to impress. Floor-to-ceiling windows. White tablecloths pressed so crisply they looked untouched. Soft lighting that made everyone look kinder than they really were. 40 people filled the room. Relatives, family, friends, business associates. People who had watched me grow up, who knew my name, my face, my role. I was the quiet one, the grateful one. The one who never caused trouble. My mother sat at the head of the table, elegant as always, her smile practiced and flawless. My sister sat 2 seats away, phone already angled slightly upward, pretending to check messages while clearly recording. My father sat beside my mother, shoulders slumped, eyes fixed on his plate like it held some kind of confession he wasn't ready to read. The waiter lit the candles on the cake. Everyone clapped. Someone shouted my name. I smiled, the way I'd learned to smile when I didn't feel safe. Then my mother stood, tapped her glass with her fork, and accepted the microphone the manager handed her. People leaned in. They expected warmth, gratitude, a toast about motherhood, about watching a daughter grow. What they got instead was the moment my life split cleanly in two. She thanked everyone for coming. She talked about honesty, about sacrifice, about doing the hard things for the greater good. Then, without a pause, she announced that I had been adopted for tax benefits, that I was never truly family, that the kindness they'd shown me was generosity, not obligation. She laughed softly, as if this were an amusing anecdote. My sister laughed louder. My father didn't move. The room went silent. And what none of them knew was that inside my clutch was an envelope my grandmother had left for me, one that would unravel every lie holding my family together. An envelope that would turn my mother's carefully planned humiliation into her own public collapse. But to understand how that night came to be, you have to go back a month earlier, to a phone call that cracked something open inside me that had been quietly breaking for years. It was a Thursday evening, just before 8. I was still at my desk at the architecture firm where I worked, staring at blueprints I'd reviewed a dozen times already. The office was nearly empty. The hum of the HVAC system and the glow of my desk lamp made the space feel hollow. I was used to being the last one there. Staying late had become a habit, a way to avoid going home to silence and unanswered questions. My phone buzzed, unknown number, local area code. I almost ignored it, almost, but something in my chest tightened and I answered. The man on the other end introduced himself as an attorney representing my grandmother's estate. My grandmother had passed away 6 months earlier. We'd already had the funeral, the formal will reading, the polite condolences. I didn't understand why her lawyer was calling now. He explained that my grandmother had left documents specifically for me, separate from the general will, and that she had been very clear they were to be delivered privately. He asked if we could meet the next morning. After I hung up, I sat alone in the office for a long time, staring at the reflection of my own face in the dark window. My grandmother had been the only person in my family who ever made me feel like my presence wasn't an inconvenience. She noticed when I went quiet. She defended me in small, careful ways when my mother's comments cut just deep enough to hurt without drawing blood. Once, when I was 16 and crying in her garden, she took my hands and told me I belonged more than I knew. One day, she said, I would understand. That night when I got home to my apartment, my phone buzzed again. The family group chat. A message from my mother announcing a lavish birthday dinner in my honor at one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city. 40 guests. A place we'd never gone for my birthday before. Not once in 30 years. For a moment, a small, foolish part of me hoped. Maybe this was different. Maybe 30 meant something. Maybe she had softened. But another part of me, the part that had learned to survive by staying alert, felt the trap tightening. The next morning, I sat across from my grandmother's attorney in an office that smelled like old books and polished wood. He placed a sealed envelope on the desk between us. My grandmother's initials were pressed into the wax. He explained that she had prepared everything years earlier, while she was healthy and sharp, and that she had insisted I receive it before the estate details became public. Inside the envelope was a certified copy of her will, a personal letter addressed to me, and a smaller sealed packet marked private. I skimmed the will first, my breath caught. She had left her primary residence, the house where every holiday and family gathering took place, to me, not to my mother, not to my sister, to me. I thought it had to be a mistake. It was deliberate, legal, final. That night, I read her letter alone in my apartment, sitting on the floor with my back against the couch. She wrote about love, about regret, about watching me grow up in a house where I was never allowed to fully belong. She apologized for not protecting me more openly. And then she wrote the sentence that changed everything. You were never brought into this family by chance. You are my blood. The smaller envelope, she explained, contained proof. Documents she had kept hidden for decades. She told me not to open it unless I absolutely had to. I didn't open it then. I wasn't ready. Part of me still wanted to believe I could survive without detonating the truth. What I didn't know was that my mother had already discovered the contents of the will and was planning something cruel enough to push me out before I could claim what was mine. The week before my birthday, a close friend urged me to prepare myself. He didn't know everything, but he knew my family well enough to sense danger. So I brought the documents with me, tucked into a slim clutch, hoping I wouldn't need them. The restaurant was breathtaking. From the outside, everything looked perfect. My mother greeted me with unfamiliar warmth. My father offered a stiff hug. My sister smiled for the camera. My aunt squeezed my hand and whispered that my grandmother would be proud of me no matter what happened. Dinner passed with polite conversation and expensive wine. For a moment, I almost believed nothing would go wrong. Then my mother stood up. She spoke about generosity, about sacrifice, about all the ways they had supported me. Then she told her version of the truth, that I had been adopted for convenience, that I was never truly family, that honesty mattered more than comfort. The room froze. My sister laughed. My father stayed silent. My mother waited for me to crumble. I didn't. I stood slowly, feeling the weight of 30 years lift from my chest. I thanked her for her honesty. Then I told everyone it was time for the full truth. I explained that my grandmother had left me her estate, that the will was legal, intentional, and prepared long before her illness. My mother tried to interrupt me. My father finally spoke, telling her to let me finish. I read my grandmother's letter aloud. I told them I wasn't adopted by chance. I was the daughter of my grandmother's firstborn son, a man the family had erased after his death. I was blood. I always had been. The room erupted. My aunt confirmed everything. My father broke down. My mother stood frozen. Finally, I opened the smaller envelope. Inside were DNA results, birth records, photographs, proof that the inheritance followed bloodline, not convenience. My mother tried to recover, to threaten, to deny, but it was over. She fled the room, leaving behind the ruins of her own making. What happened afterward surprised me most. People stayed. They apologized. They admitted what they had ignored. My aunt told me stories about my father I'd never known. I cried, not from shame, but from release. In the weeks that followed, my life changed quietly. My mother disappeared from my life. My sister reached out, uncertain. My father tried to rebuild something fragile and overdue. I took ownership of the estate not as a victory, but as a responsibility. I turned my grandmother's room into a memorial. I created a scholarship for kids who grew up feeling unwanted, kids who knew what it felt like to be invisible. Standing in that house alone for the first time, I realized something profound. Belonging isn't something others get to grant or deny. It's something you claim. I spent 30 years auditioning for love that was never coming. I stopped performing. I chose myself. If you've ever felt erased by the people who were supposed to protect you, know this. Their version of you was never the truth. Thank you for staying with me. If this story resonated, share your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, please like the video, subscribe to Calm Real Stories, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. You never needed permission to belong.